Why the Chickadee Goes Crazy Once a Year, from Johnny Bear and Other Stories, from Lives of the Hunted, by Ernest Thompson, Seton. Coffee Break Collection, number 37, More Birds. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Rita Boutros. Why the Chickadee Goes Crazy Once a Year, published September 1893 in Our Animal Friends, the organ of the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. A long time ago, when there was no winter in the North, the chickadees lived merrily in the woods with their relatives, and cared for nothing but to get all the pleasure possible out of their daily life in the thickets. But at length Mother Carey sent them all a warning that they must move to the south, for hard frost and snow were coming on their domains, with starvation close behind. The nuthatches and other cousins of the chickadees took this warning seriously, and set about learning how and when to go. But Tom Tit, who led his brothers, only laughed and turned a dozen wheels around a twig that served him for a trapeze. "Go to the south?" said he. "Not I. I am too well contented here, and as for frost and snow, I never saw any, and have no faith in them." But the nuthatches and kinglets were in such a state of bustle that at length the chickadees did catch a little of the excitement, and left off play for a while to question their friends. And they were not pleased with what they learned, for it seemed that all of them were to make a journey that would last many days, and the little kinglets were actually going as far as the Gulf of Mexico. Besides, they were to fly by night in order to avoid their enemies the hawks, and the weather at this season was sure to be stormy. So the chickadees said it was all nonsense, and went off in a band, singing and chasing one another through the woods. But their cousins were in earnest. They bustled about making their preparations, and learned beforehand what it was necessary for them to know about the way. The great wide river running southward, the moon at height, and the trumpeting of the geese were to be their guides, and they were to sing as they flew in the darkness, to keep from being scattered. The noisy, rollicking chickadees were noisier than ever as the preparations went on, and made sport of their relatives, who were now gathered in great numbers in the woods along the river. And at length, when the proper time of the moon came, the cousins arose in a body and flew away in the gloom. The chickadees said that the cousins all were crazy, made some good jokes about the Gulf of Mexico, and then dashed away in a game of tag through the woods, which, by the by, seemed rather deserted now, while the weather, too, was certainly turning remarkably cool. At length the frost and snow really did come, and the chickadees were in a woeful case. Indeed, they were frightened out of their wits, and dashed hither and thither, seeking in vain for someone to set them aright on the way to the south. They flew wildly about the woods till they were truly crazy. I suppose there was not a squirrel hole or a hollow log in the neighborhood that some chickadee did not enter to inquire if this was the Gulf of Mexico. But no one could tell anything about it. No one was going that way, and the great river was hidden under ice and snow. About this time a messenger from Mother Carey was passing with a message to the caribou in the far north, but all he could tell the chickadees was that he could not be their guide, as he had no instructions, and at any rate he was going the other way. Besides, he told them they had had the same notice as their cousins, whom they had called crazy, and from what he knew of Mother Carey, they would probably have to brave it out here all through the snow, not only now, but in all following winters, so they might as well make the best of it. This was sad news for the tomtits, but they were brave little fellows, and seeing they could not help themselves, they set about making the best of it. Before a week had gone by, they were in their usual good spirits again, scrambling about the twigs or chasing one another as before. They had still the assurance that winter would end. So filled were they with this idea that even at its commencement, when a fresh blizzard came on, they would gleefully remark to one another that it was a sign of spring, and one or another of the band would lift his voice in the sweet little chant that we all know so well. "Spring soon, spring soon." Another would take it up and re-echo, "Spring coming, spring coming." And they would answer and repeat the song until the dreary woods rang again with the good news, and people learned to love the brave little bird that sets his face so cheerfully to meet so hard a case. But to this day, when the chill wind blows through the deserted woods, the chickadees seem to lose their wits for a few days, and dart into all sorts of odd and dangerous places. They may then be found in great cities, or open prairies, cellars, chimneys, and hollow logs. And the next time you find one of the wanderers in any such place, be sure to remember that Tomtit goes crazy once a year, and probably went into his strange retreat in search of the Gulf of Mexico. End of Why the Chickadee Goes Crazy Once a Year, from Johnny Bear and Other Stories, from Lives of the Hunted, by Ernest Thompson Seton.